Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Today is the day President Trump has said he will resume his daily briefings to the public as the pandemic continues and cases continue to surge across the country. We are standing by right now for the president to take the podium at the White House, potentially any minute now. The briefing is scheduled to start at 5 p.m. Eastern, but as we know, when these were happening on a regular basis, they were often late. We are ready, though, to take you there when that begins. These briefings, of course, have been quite controversial, with the president sometimes contradicting the scientists standing right next to him and also pushing treatments that have not yet been proven. Meantime, of course, the president, as of yesterday, has started urging Americans to wear masks, saying to do so is patriotic. All that said, stocks, a mixed picture today, tech leading the losses. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle has been breaking it all down and watching the action. Abigail, what was driving this?
You know, another jittery day, Emily, and another day where this is not a satisfactory answer, or it doesn't feel like it's a satisfactory answer to some, but it has more to do with trading and technicals as opposed to fundamental reasons. It's very hard to say that yesterday was risk off and therefore you had technology and stay-at-home leading, and today is risk on and therefore you have cyclicals. Because take a look at the S&P 500, up just slightly. If it was a strong cyclical rally, and the sectors that were higher were those cyclical sectors such as energy and financials and industrials, but nonetheless a tiny gain there, and that has to do with that tech loss that you're talking about, weakness. The Nasdaq 100 down 1%, so more jittery action. That tells you lots of uncertainty as we head into the heart of this earnings season, where there was some strength because of that dollar being down for a third day. Gold and silver up for a third day in a row, its best 3 days since March. In fact, off of the March lows, if you can believe it, Emily, silver is up more than 80%. So that's clearly where some money is going, even if it's not going into stocks as we sort of waffle around in this range of uncertainty. After hours, we of course have some movers on earnings, including Snap, which those shares are lower but off of the lows, and they, of course, their daily user growth lags the forecast, even though revenues were up 17%. So when you include that with Netflix last week, that's another suggestion that not that Snap is necessarily a stay-at-home stock, but this technology stock not used quite as much as maybe some investors and traders had hoped. Texas Instruments, on the other hand, up just a little bit on a quarter that was okay. They gave a very strong forecast on inventories, and then United Airlines, that stock is really off of its highs. In the after hours, it had been up 3%. They beat the revenue estimate by, if you can believe it, 16%, but that call is going on. So information, traders must have just changed their mind. So again, lots of jitters as these earnings results come out. The second quarter, Emily, largely regarded for most of these quarters to not be great, just speaking overall. So everybody's looking forward to the forecasts.
Interesting. All right. Well, we've got more earnings coming out this week, including Tesla out tomorrow. What are you going to be watching there?
This is a big one, Emily, and options-wise, it is suggested that Tesla is going to move 15% up or down. Now, given the fact that this stock is already up 250% this year, it's hard to see another 15% to the upside, also based on some of the technicals. But who knows? We already know that they exceeded the delivery number for the second quarter, so it's really going to be about the forecast. Another point could be, will they put up a fourth quarterly profit in a row? That would certainly be a positive. But I think it really, again, is going to be that look forward that folks want so much. Relative to that 15% move to the upside or downside, when we connect that to market cap, it's not a small move, Emily. It will be roughly $49 billion in market cap if Tesla does, in fact, make that huge move off of its earnings report. But when we put that into comparison to some of the other mega cap, the real mega cap stocks, Amazon, they, of course, report next week based on the current options pricing after they report. And let's remember, after the last report, that stock was actually down 7%. We could see a move in Amazon's market cap of $145 billion. But yes, all eyes on Tesla tomorrow after the bell, perhaps a 15% move up or down, depending on what they talk about relative to the future. And again, that could be a $50 billion move in just one day. Thursday could be pretty exciting, Emily.
Our eyes will certainly be on it. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle, thanks so much for breaking it all down. Meantime, it seems to have been a good year for insurance technology companies. Hippo, hot on the heels of its rival Lemonade going public just a couple of weeks ago, has raised $150 million in fresh funding. The company now valued at $1.5 billion. Joining us now is the CEO and co-founder, Asaf Wand. Asaf, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love it if you could start by sort of painting the picture of the environment out there. Obviously, we're in the middle of a health crisis and an economic crisis. We're waiting on potentially a new relief package from Congress, but for many people, it's not going to come soon enough. What was it like for you trying to raise money in these conditions?
Yes, not easy. That's the honest truth on this. I think what you see is several things. One is that insurance as a whole, as a sector, is quite resilient. And specifically, home insurance has as close to a beta of 0. And that resonates very, very well with investors now. Most people, there was a panic at the beginning, and then they realized that they're actually staying at home. And people that are homeowners are more, stronger based than some of the other people in the economy. And most of them still maintain their insurance. It's something that lasts for quite a long time. And if anything, this is exactly the right time to refresh and renew your insurance, making sure that you have the latest and greatest, that you have the right coverage for the risk that you have, because our homes are not set up to have people staying in them for so long.
That said, conventional wisdom would seem to say that not as many people are moving right now, not as many people are buying a new home right now. What sort of trends you're seeing when it comes to demand from customers when it comes to impact from the pandemic?
Even in that short time span of, let's say, the last 4 months, then the beginning, you're absolutely right. There was a lot less movement of new homes. And some of the channels in the partnership that we've seen, companies like Open Doors and et cetera, and Lennar, that are big partners of ours, there was a decrease in home sales at the beginning. However, interest rates were down, and some of the partnerships that had to do with mortgage origination were up because people were refinancing their homes. And then in the second part, I would say from May and June, what you've seen was back to where the market was a year before. I think people got stayed at home for enough time, and they realized that they need to come up and renovate their home or shift to a new home, because everybody has this question of like, I really like my home, but I could use another room, a swimming pool, a deck, fill in the blank. And this is what you're seeing now, a surge of DIY project, a surge of contractors work, and a lot of new home buys.
You do have an interesting model in that your package includes smart home devices, smart home maintenance and repair, even tele-maintenance, and yet you can offer this, you say, at 25% less than some of your competitors. How are you able to do that?
It's a combination of two things. One, we are a new technology company, and our cost base is very, very different than all basically carriers. So our cost base is very, very different, which enables us to offer something cheaper. The second thing is that if you'll open your home insurance policy, you'll see that you're covered for things such as fur coats and pewter boards and china and silverware. Things like mausoleums and crypts are covered, but your home office are not. By taking these things out, by removing some of the fees, will enable us to offer the price, a way cheaper price for you. And then for the smart home components, we have a big belief is that the best claim experience is a claim that we can avoid having in the first place. And we think that by offering you smart home kits to basically announce potential water leaks, smoke, fire, alarms and things like that, we can help prevent some of the losses from happening in the first place. Our tele-maintenance component is, we acquired a company around 9 months ago that used to do a home checkup. We used to send someone to your home to do a home checkup, cleaning gutters, checking air filters, and helping you with some light work in your home. Sadly, in COVID times, we can't send these people to your home. So we shifted them to be tele-maintenance, and they're helping all of our customers remotely. So our customers can call if they have a small project or if they have a small leak or anything like that they require help. You can just contact our people, and they will help you out with that.
Now, what is your outlook then on the coming few months? We're standing by right now waiting for President Trump to take the podium again. He's made it sound like he's going to restart his daily briefings. It's almost like deja vu, this as cases resurge across the country. And I wonder if you're preparing for people to sort of buckle down again, to not move, to not buy new homes, and what your sort of outlook for the second half of 2020 is?
I would say slightly more pessimistic than optimistic, if on a personal level. But we're always bracing for impact and what's going to happen. As I said before, even on the first quarter and in the second quarter that were bad quarters for the US, the company was actually doing very, very well. What you see is if people are going to stay more at home, they would look for to save money. They would look for online distribution. What you're seeing is that several sectors in the market are speeding up by several years ahead. So things like, I don't know, telemedicine probably moved 5 to 10 years ahead.
All right, Asaf, we're going to have to leave it there. The president has taken the podium now. Let's listen in.
Provide an update on our response to the China virus and what my administration is doing to get the outbreak in the Sun Belt under control. Seems largely in Sun Belt, but could be spreading. My team is also working night and day with Capitol Hill to advance the next economic relief package. We're working very hard on it. We're making a lot of progress. I also know that both sides want to get it done. We'll call it phase 4. I think we're going to get it done. We'll protect our workers, our schools, and our families, and protect them very strongly. As one family, we mourn every precious life that's been lost. I pledge in their honor that we will develop a vaccine and we will defeat the virus. We're doing very well with vaccine development and therapeutic development. But I want to thank our brave doctors and nurses and frontline responders. The job they do is incredible, and they are truly brave. My administration will stop at nothing to save lives and shield the vulnerable, which is so important. We've learned so much about this disease, and we know who the vulnerable are, and we are going to indeed shield them. And again, the vaccines are coming, and they're coming a lot sooner than anyone thought possible, by years. If you look at the old system and look at the new system, I think by years. The China virus is a vicious and dangerous illness, but we've learned a great deal about it and who it targets. We are in the process of developing a strategy that's going to be very, very powerful. We've developed them as we go along. Some areas of our country are doing very well. Others are doing less well. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world, and it tends to do that. The governors are working very, very hard, and we are supporting them 100%. Everything they need, they get, and we are taking good care. We have tremendous supplies and a great supply chain, whether it's ventilators or gowns or just about anything they need. So that's a big difference from inheriting very, very empty cupboards. The median age of those who succumb to the China virus is 78 years old. Roughly half of all deaths have been individuals in nursing homes or long-term care. In one study, 90% of those hospitalized had underlying medical conditions, whether it's heart or diabetes, but usually it's some kind of a condition. It seems that people have that, and if they do, it's a problem, no question about it. Young adults may often have mild or even no symptoms. They won't even know they're sick. They won't have any idea that they have a virus. They won't have any idea at all. America's youth will act responsibly, and we're asking everybody that when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get. Data shows children have the lowest fatality risk. 99.96% of all virus fatalities are in adults. Think of that. So that's much, much, much less than 1% for children, young people. By understanding these risk profiles and learning how to treat the disease, we've been able to greatly reduce mortality in the United States. In fact, we'll show you a chart and how well we do compared to the rest of the world. We have several treatments already available that significantly reduce the severity and duration of the disease, including remdesivir, which has been very successful and a widely available steroid treatment. And we have many more happening and coming out. We've learned best practices for treatment of the virus at every stage and have shared these findings with medical providers, and we've shared them all over the world. The relationship with other countries has been very strong. We're all working together. This includes ensuring all hospitals are aware of the importance of different approaches to oxygen treatment, including high-flow oxygen, the importance of steroid treatment for those on ventilators. And when you're on a ventilator, we've learned a tremendous about the use of the ventilator. And at the beginning, people never had an experience like this, where we needed so many ventilators so fast, and even the use of the ventilators. But the doctors have become incredibly, and nurses and helpers have become incredibly good at the use of a ventilator, which is actually a very complicated procedure, and allocating remdesivir to hospitals based on new admissions, since it works best early in hospitalization. And that's something that they've really started. They're using it much earlier. Fatalities nationwide have fallen 75% since mid-April. That's a great number. As cases and fatalities rise in certain hard-hit states, which you're looking at right now, we're surging personnel, supplies, and therapeutics. We, again, have tremendous amounts of supplies. We are in very good shape, and we can move them quickly. Our case fatality rate has continued to decline and is lower than the European Union and almost everywhere else in the world. If you watch American television, you'd think that the United States was the only country involved with and suffering from the China virus. Well, the world is suffering very badly. But the fact is that many countries are suffering very, very, very badly. And they've been suffering from this virus for a long time. We've done much better than most, and with the fatality rate at a lower rate than most, it's something that we can talk about, but we're working again with them because we're helping a lot of countries that people don't even know about. I get calls all the time asking for help, especially as it pertains to the ventilators. They need help with ventilators. They have to get them. They're very hard to get. We're making thousands now a month, thousands of ventilators a month. It's been quite amazing. We keep doing the good job, and things will get better and better. We'll be putting up charts behind me showing different statistics and different rates of success, and I guess you could say also things that we can do better on. But you'll see them. They'll be put up as we go. In April, the average age of individuals who tested positive for the virus was over 50 years old. Today, the average age is significantly younger. Hospital lengths of stay are almost half of what they were in April. So the stays are about half. The rate of cases requiring hospitalization has been reduced, and mortality among those admitted to the hospital is nearly one half of what it was in April. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about this disease, how to handle it. The doctors have learned a lot, not only in the use of the ventilators, but in many other things. And things are happening, too, like the remdesivir and other elements, steroids, et cetera. But these trends could change without our continued and relentless focus. And that's what we have. We have a relentless focus, and it's been that way from the beginning. But we've learned so much. As you know, in recent weeks, we've seen a concerning rise in the cases in many parts of our south. You look at south, southwest, and west. This growth in cases first began to appear in mid-June, primarily among 18 to 35-year-olds, many of whom were asymptomatic. We're also facing the challenge of a significant spike in virus cases across the rest of the Western Hemisphere, including Mexico. Mexico's been hit very, very, very hard. As you know, the president, a great gentleman, was here 2 weeks ago, and they have really been hit hard. Because we've achieved a nearly four-fold increase in testing capacity in 2 months, we're successfully identifying more asymptomatic and mild cases. Some cases so mild that you really don't even treat them. Some cases with children where they don't even know that they're ill. And I guess they're not very ill because they recover almost immediately. Per capita, the U.S. is conducting 50% more tests than Europe. And we've conducted nearly 3 times as many tests as all of the other countries in the Western Hemisphere combined. Be over 50 million tests. This allows us to isolate those who are infected, even those without symptoms, so we know exactly where it's going and when it's going to be there. We're also working to reduce turnaround time. My administration has been aggressively responding to case growth in the Sun Belt, and we continue to do so, working very close with all governors, but right now, in particular, those governors. We're coordinating closely with hospitals and governors. In the last 3 weeks, I've sent senior officials into 9 states to meet with governors and provide recommendations to the various leaders of the state, including hospital administrators, et cetera. My administration currently has 0 unfulfilled requests for equipment or anything else that they need from the governors. No governor needs anything right now, and we think we'll have it that way till the end because, frankly, we are stocked up and ready to go wherever we have to go. We've nearly 7,000 National Guard and military medical personnel in Texas, California, Florida, and Arizona that's helping us greatly. I want to thank them very much. The military has been fantastic. We're closely monitoring hospital capacity in these states. Hospitals are open for elective surgeries and other procedures. So hospitals are open for elective surgeries. We want Americans to get the medical treatments they need. All of the governors we've spoken with say they have enough bed capacity. That's a great thing. Our initial shutdown was to prevent the overflow of our hospitals and to allow us to meet the demands caused by this global pandemic, including the ventilators. And a permanent shutdown was really never an option in terms of what we're doing right now. This would be completely unsustainable, produce debilitating economic fallback, and lead to catastrophic public health consequences. There are consequences to shutdowns, and we've saved potentially millions of lives by doing the initial shutdown, but now we're very aware of this disease. We understand the disease to a large extent. Nobody's going to maybe ever fully understand it, but we'll end up with a cure, we'll end up with therapeutics, we'll end up with a vaccine very soon, all 3. We're instead asking Americans to use masks, socially distance, and employ vigorous hygiene. Wash your hands every chance you get while sheltering high-risk populations. We are imploring young Americans to avoid packed bars and other crowded indoor gatherings. Be safe and be smart. We're surging testing capacity to identify and isolate cases. This includes a newly approved testing platform to nursing homes across the South. We're being very, very vigilant with respect to nursing homes because you know all of the problems that we've had with so many people, so sadly, they were infected, so that all of the staff and residents can be routinely tested and isolated to ensure our elderly are even more strongly protected than anybody else. That's really the high-risk people, the high-risk, wonderful people. Once this current surge in cases declines, the same testing platform will enable people to visit their loved ones after taking a test, which is a big difference. Ultimately, our goal is not merely to manage the pandemic, but to end it. We want to get rid of it as soon as we can. That is why getting a vaccine remains a top priority. 2 vaccine candidates are entering the final stage of clinical trials this month. This was achieved in record time. It used to be years before you were in a position like we are right now. 4 other vaccines will enter final trials in the following weeks, and we're mass producing all of the top candidates so that the first approved vaccine will be available immediately. And logistically, we have the military ready to go. We have great people, logistic military people, a wonderful general who's waiting for the vaccine so they can distribute it in record time. That's what's going to happen. So our military is all set to go. We will deliver a vaccine, therapeutics, whatever it is necessary, and defeat the virus once and for all. And I'll take a few questions if you'd like. I will say this. I want to thank all of the staff, the White House staff, all of the doctors that we've been working with so closely, and just a lot of very positive things are happening. It's a nasty, horrible, disease that should have never been allowed to escape China, but it did. And it infected the world, and the world is suffering, but we're going to get it taken care of, and we're helping lots of other countries. John?
Mr. President, first I just wanted to get a clarification. Your press secretary said today that you sometimes take more than one test a day. Well, why is that, and how often?
Well, I didn't know about more than one. I do take probably on average a test every 2 days, 3 days, and I don't know of any time I've taken 2 tests in one day, but I could see that happening.
So Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill both said that they want to see more money for testing. They want to send billions of dollars to the states so they can do more testing. And you probably saw Mick Mulvaney the other day said that his kids, it took them a week to get test results back. He said this is simply inexcusable. Given where we are in the pandemic. Do you think we have a problem with testing in this country right now?
Well,
and are you in favor of more money for testing?
We've done more testing by far than anybody. Some of the tests, because it is massive volume, it takes longer. Others of the tests, as you know, are very quick. They're 5 minutes and 15-minute tests, and those are, frankly, the ones that I prefer. But we're doing massive numbers, and the numbers are coming down. And as we go, as an example, there are thousands and thousands of kits being made right now, which give you a 15-minute and a 5-minute test. So we'll be able to get those numbers down. Those numbers are similar in other places. They're also doing massive numbers like nobody thought possible. But those numbers will be coming down. I agree. I think it's a good thing if we can do it.
Are you in favor of more money for testing?
Well, they're going to make a presentation to me tonight and tomorrow on that. And again, we're leading the world. I think the second country at 12 million, we're going to be over 50 million tests. Second country is India with 12 million. Then you have 7 million, 6 million, and 4 million. I think that we are doing tremendous amount of testing. But if the doctors and the professionals feel that even though we're at a level that nobody ever dreamt possible, that they would like to do more, I'm okay with it.
Why are your doctors not with you here today? Where's Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx?
Well, Dr. Birx is right outside. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've got 2 questions for you, if that's all right. Number one, I just wanted to know, in November, do you want the American people to judge
Could you
on
speak up, please?
Do you want the American people to judge you on the ballot in November by how you've handled this pandemic so far?
This, among other things, I think the American people will judge us on this, but they'll judge us on the economy that I created and that already we're creating. We're setting record job numbers, as you know. I think we're going to have a very strong year next year. I think we're going to have a very strong third quarter, a very good fourth quarter, but I think next year is going to be a record year. And I think they're going to judge me on that. I think they're going to judge me on the tax cutting and the regulation cutting, which nobody's ever done to the extent that we've been able to do it, on rebuilding the military, on how we've handled the VA. On the VA, we got Veterans Choice. Nobody thought that would be possible. That's been many decades. They've been trying to get Veterans Choice. It's called Choice, where they can go get a doctor if they have to wait online for 2 weeks or 5 weeks or 2 days. And frankly, that's been a great thing. Veterans accountability, I think they'll judge me on that. They'll judge me on all of the things we've done. I don't think, and I think we can say this with surety, and it's never been even challenged in 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years, the first years of a presidency, I don't think any administration, any president has accomplished so much as we've accomplished, from energy to health to so many other things. And then this came in, and the plague, I call it the plague came in, terrible thing, should have been stopped, wasn't stopped. It came in, we had to shut things down to save potentially millions of lives. We did that, and now we've started them up. And I think we've really started it up very successfully. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. You've been saying for months that the virus would simply disappear, and now you're saying that it's likely to get worse before it gets better. If it does keep getting worse, if Americans keep dying, are you responsible for that?
Well, the virus will disappear. It will disappear. I think that I always like to say, as you know, either way, when you look at it, the governors are working with me. I'm working with the governor. We're working hand in hand. I think we're all responsible. I view it as a team. Very good relationships with the governors. Very, very good relationships. I could say I'm fully responsible, but, you know, one day we had a virus come in, and I closed the borders, did a lot of things that were very good. In fact, Dr. Fauci said we saved tens of thousands of lives when I closed the border, and nobody wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. We closed the border to China. We put on the ban. We didn't want people coming in from heavily infected China. fairly shortly thereafter, I closed the borders from Europe, coming in from Europe. Those were tremendous moves. We would have, if it's one person, it's too much, but we're at, let's say, 140,000. We could have double, triple, quadruple that number if we didn't. So we did a lot of things right. We did a lot of things right, including with equipment. So it's a shame that it happened. It shouldn't have happened. China should have stopped it.
Thank you,
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, President Trump. If I could, two questions. My first question is, we have a very quick testing platform here at the White House.
Yes.
It's great. You get tested, you know, very quickly. Do you think that it would be easier to reopen and restart businesses if we could produce more of those machines?
We're trying to do that. Great question. We're trying very much to do that. So rather than sending your tests in and, you know, it goes through the mail one day, comes back another day, no matter how they send them, it's a day and a day, so that's 2 days already wasted. And then if it spends by the time you get it back, it's 3 or 4 days if they do an efficient job. We're trying to get the testing on site.
Thank you.
I like it the best.
And my follow-up, my second question, it's a little bit different topic, but it's one that a lot of people are talking about. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is. I don't know the situation with Prince Andrew. Just don't know. Not aware of it.
Mr. President.
On unemployment insurance, how much below $600 are you willing to go? And you said that the economy is bouncing back strong, so why do we need to even cut it at all?
Well, the economy is getting stronger, and I think we have a chance to have a very strong economy, especially if some of the things that I just spoke about work. We want to have people go back and want to go back to work, as opposed to be sort of forced into a position where they're making more money than they expected to make, and the employers are having a hard time getting them back to work. So that was a decision that was made. I was against that original decision, but they did that. It still worked out well because it gave people a lifeline, a real lifeline. Now we're doing it again. They're thinking about doing 70% of the amount. The amount would be the same, but doing it in a little bit smaller initial amounts so that people are going to want to go back to work, as opposed to making so much money that they really don't have to. But we were very generous with them. I think that it's been a tremendously successful program. The whole thing has been successful, if you look. I mean, we're in a pandemic, and yet we're producing tremendous number of jobs. That was something that nobody thought possible. Okay, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Yesterday you said that wearing a mask was an act of patriotism. If that is the case, why don't you do it more frequently?
Well, I do actually do it when I need. I mean, I carry the mask when I have to go. I went into Walter Reed Hospital the other day. I have the mask right here, and I carry it, and I will use it gladly. No problem with it. And I've said that, and I say, if you can, use the mask. When you can, use the mask. If you're close to each other, if you're in a group, I would put it on when I'm in a group. If I'm in an elevator and there are other people with me, including like security people, it's not their fault. They have to be in the elevator. I want to protect them also. I put on a mask. I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. You saw me wearing it a number of times, and I'll continue. Please.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I ask you a quick
President.
follow-up?
Go ahead, please.
So are you sending mixed messages? So
Thank you.
yesterday you tweeted out an image wearing a mask, and then last evening we saw you not wearing a mask at your hotel.
Well, I don't know the hotel. I was pretty far away from people, but I would say this. I've explained it, I think, very well. If you're close together, I would put on the mask. And if you're not, I would say that if you're, for instance, I'll see, like here, you've been all tested, I've been tested. Oftentimes I'll be with people that are fully tested, I've been tested. In theory, you don't need the mask. I'm getting used to the mask. And the reason is, think about patriotism. Maybe it is, it helps. It helps. Now, we have experts that have said in the recent past that masks aren't necessarily good to wear. You know that. But now they've changed their mind. If they change their mind, that's good enough for me. So I wear it when appropriate. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
A lot of Americans, though, may be surprised at your change of tone over all of this, a more perhaps realistic tone. Some would look at it that way. The sudden embrace of masks, social distancing,
Well, I've always agreed with that. I mean, I've never fought either one, but certainly social distancing. I want to. That's common sense. 6 feet to me is common sense. I'd like to say maybe make it a little bit further.
The idea that things will get worse perhaps before they get better here, and perhaps the realization that this resurgence, if you will, is for real when you used to talk about it in terms of little fires being put out here and there. Would you respond to that?
No, we have embers and fires, and we have big fires, and unfortunately now Florida is in a little tough or in a big tough position. You have a great governor there. You have a great governor in Texas. You have people that are very, very skilled people, and I think they're going to handle it very well. Their hospital capacities are holding up, but Texas is a big state, and it's very well run, and so is Florida, and I think they'll do a very good job.
Are you changing your tone, though, sir?
I just wanted to ask you about the issue of vaccines, which you already mentioned. Yesterday, a study by a Chinese company showed some promising results for its coronavirus vaccine candidate. If China were first in developing the vaccine, or even if it weren't, would the administration be willing to work with China to bring a successful Chinese vaccine to the U.S.?
Yeah, we're willing to work with anybody that's going to get us a good result. We're very close to the vaccine. I think we're going to have some very good results. We're already in testing. Nobody thought that would be possible. Under the old system, it would be a year to 2 years before you could even think about using the word testing. So I think we've had a lot of, and the reason we're testing, I mean, they've had good results. So now we have to see in the testing also for safety, because they have to make sure it's safe. And I think you're going to see something over the next fairly short period of time, maybe very short period of time, having to do with therapeutics and vaccines that are very good. So we'll be doing these quite often. We're going to keep you abreast of this, and we'll also talk about some of the other topics like our economy, which is doing well. The stock market had another good day. I think they have a good day because they see a lot of positive things happening on this front, too. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, President Trump, they're saying he's going to be doing these briefings more often, not specifically saying they will be every day, but this seems to be the first of a new series of briefings that he did do every day at the height of the pandemic. The president urging Americans to wear masks. Lots of discussion there about the president's own wearing of a mask or lack thereof, saying that the virus could get worse before it gets better, highlighting cases continuing to surge in southern and western parts of the country, talking about how he doesn't have a problem with masks in particular, will use it gladly. Our Bloomberg congressional reporter, Emily Wilkins, has been listening in and joins us now on the phone. Emily, the president more on message, it seems, than usual. What were your takeaways of what the president had to say?
Yes, this is definitely a more reserved tone from Trump than what we've been hearing in the past. If you remember, he's previously sort of played down the issue of coronavirus, suggesting it would just disappear. His focus has really been on reopening the economy. And today just marked a change in tone that we've actually been seeing a little bit for the past several days. He encouraged Americans to wear a mask. He tweeted out a photo of himself the other day wearing a mask. This is something we haven't really seen the president do in public previously. He acknowledged that coronavirus is going to get worse before it gets better. And he asked Americans to please be safe, avoid crowded areas, including bars. So this message really seemed to be one more focused on safety and ending the virus, a little more focused than we've heard in previous briefings.
He did say that the virus will disappear. He certainly asserted that. He talked about the progress when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to treatments. That said, when it comes to reopening the economy, and there continues to be debate on that, what should happen in the fall? Should schools reopen or not? He said a permanent shutdown was, quote, never really an option. You think about some countries where they did go into lockdown for an extended period of time. Their case numbers don't look anything like ours today. You know, what do you make of that in the context of the economy?
I mean, there is a lot of pressure right now, particularly from Republicans for the economy to reopen. I sort of want to put this almost in the context a little bit of Trump's reelection, because that was one of the main things that he was planning to run on in 2020 for November, was that he did have such a strong economy, such good job growth. And that really isn't the case anymore at this time. He sort of has to remind people of what the economy was previously. And so there is that pressure to go ahead and focus on the economy. But and this is not a new thing that we've heard. We've heard from other people in the White House that, if we really want the economy to open, we have to get the number of cases in the U.S. under control. Because compared to such as the European Union, compared to Australia, compared to a number of other countries, the U.S. is having way more cases on a daily basis and way more deaths as well.
What do you make of his remarks about testing? He was pressed there on whether he thinks testing is actually going very well, whether or not we need more money for testing. You're still hearing stories about people getting tested, not getting an answer for more than a week. What is the latest when it comes to, better testing across the country? Yes, it's true, as he says, that we've done testing more than perhaps any country in the world, but also we've got an exploding number of cases.
Absolutely. And I think you did see Trump get a little bit defensive there at certain points of that press conference, trying to defend his own response to the coronavirus, both in terms of testing, in terms of what policies he's done. And you've kind of seen this tension exist in the White House as sort of cases in America have continued to increase to try to throw blame to China, as you saw today. I mean, look, vaccine testing is something that, if you want to move down a little bit down the street from the White House to Congress, it's absolutely being discussed as something that needs to continue to be funding an upcoming coronavirus stimulus bill. This is something that lawmakers of both parties agree needs to be funding for, and that there needs to be continued research and funding for that research into coronavirus and a vaccine.
Meantime, you have the CDC coming out today saying that cases could be 2 to 13 times higher than reported in certain parts of the country. And, you're continuing to see this divergence in terms of how, the governor of Florida versus the governor of California is handling this. You saw him specifically reference Governor DeSantis there, saying he's in a quote unquote tough position, according to the president. At what point do you think that will influence some of the policy that these Republican governors are making in southern states?
I think we've seen governors in various states sort of respond to the situation that's in front of them. For example, you saw Texas Governor Greg Abbott open up Texas, and then several days later, you saw him come back and say, you know what, we can't. We're seeing cases spike. We need to lock things down again. And you are seeing governors really begin to sort of engage in this dance where they do want to open up. They do want to get the economy back online, but then they're opening up and cases spike. Death spike, they start to see way more problems, and so they have to kind of shut back down again. And it almost seems that, in a sense, Americans are sort of learning what they really need to do and how they really need to behave in this new era of coronavirus. And it's kind of one of these things where they're trying to open up. Everyone kind of wants to get to the point, where you can see family and go to restaurants and stuff like that. But it does. It requires social distancing. It requires people to wear a mask, and it requires a number of practices that we're still not seeing implemented consistently throughout the country.
Meantime, also today, you've got the Department of Justice talking about 2 Chinese hackers alleged to be stealing or attempting to steal coronavirus research from the United States on behalf of the Chinese government. Obviously, we heard about this last week when it comes to Russia. What can you tell us about this latest situation when it comes to China?
Absolutely. We heard, like you mentioned, we heard Russia last week. We did hear China as well, too. But today we have something much more specific as far as accusing 2 hackers working to try and steal data for coronavirus research from Western companies. And it's not just the U.S. There were 11 other nations that were involved in this. This is simply something where there's a lot of, I think, pressure right now. Think about it. Whatever country winds up getting this vaccine is going to have a big economic advantage. They're going to have a big commercial advantage, just a big advantage for their people in general. I think there's a rush right now for everyone to get their hands on this vaccine, and I think hacking is something that unfortunately is a side effect of how desperately so many nations want to make sure that they're getting this vaccine.
All right, our Bloomberg congressional reporter Emily Wilkins there. Thank you so much. For more on that story about these two China hackers charged by the U.S. government, our own Kevin Cirilli spoke with John Demers, the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security. Take a listen to that conversation.
We're announcing the charges today. The activities of the group continue up to the day of the indictment. And so we're obviously going to continue to monitor what they do, but even more importantly, continue to work with those private sector companies to help them guard against this kind of activity. As we say in the indictment, they come back, right? And they've hacked and then they come back for more. Luckily, by working with the companies, by working with the Department of Energy, we've managed to prevent some of their returning hacks.
What are some of the steps that the private sector can take to prevent hackers from looking after this important intellectual property?
Well, always safeguarding your data on the most secure computer systems you can. And that's, of course, even more important these days when so many people are working remotely on systems that, they had to set up overnight. And the second piece is going to the FBI. If you think something went on, don't just think, oh, I've got an HR problem, oh, it's a glitch, but understand that this could very well be hackers. And you're not going to be able to figure it out by yourself. So go to the Bureau and get their help.
Let me follow up on this, because for many C-level executives, the thought of having the FBI or regulators come into their boardroom and have these type of investigations, they view this as a significant reputational risk hazard. But to your point, can you assure them that if they work with the authorities through the proper channels, that they're not going to face any damage from their business bottom line, but also might ultimately be protecting themselves?
Well, I think the worst thing you could do in the C-suite is not go to the Bureau and then get found about later, that you didn't try to do everything you could to protect your company's data once you saw there was a breach. If you work with the Bureau, you could see in this indictment, we did not name any of the companies involved. We worked closely with all of those companies, and collaboratively, we've been doing this for many years now, and we will try to protect your identity. We're obviously not there to just root around your files and look at whatever we can. We're there to investigate this breach, and we'll try to do it without disrupting the rest of your activity.
I know that you announced the two indictments from this morning, but when you read that, I guess there's a lot of concern that the Communist Party of China might have been supporting these individuals. Is there evidence to suggest as much?
Well, what they're doing is allowing them to continue their criminal activity instead of acting like a normal government would, which is shutting down criminal cyber intrusions, allowing them to continue it because they're on call for the benefit of the state. So obviously, they're extorting companies and trying to steal for their own profit, but at the same time, you can see from the conduct that's alleged, they're out there looking at human rights dissidents, looking at clergymen who are not part of the official churches in China. So they're doing the Chinese Communist Party's bidding at the same time that they're making money for themselves.
Does that mean that there potentially could be additional charges or additional sanctions that are placed on Chinese individuals who are aiding this type of conduct?
Well, we're always continuing these investigations, and we'll see where they go.
That sounds like a maybe. When you look at Congress and from a legislative standpoint, do you think that there's anything that Congress needs to pass in order to better protect the private sector and the supply chains, as well as to protect some of these businesses from being penetrated by the Communist Party?
I think, at this point, we have the tools that we need. Obviously, we have a supply chain executive order now that is also meant to protect the supply chain. It's a great question because it is a constantly evolving threat, and so that we've got to constantly work with Congress to make sure that we have what we need, and the private sector has what it needs to protect itself from these kinds of threats.
John Demers there, the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security. We'll be right back with more of Bloomberg Technology after this quick break. Facebook has started adding voting information labels to posts about the 2020 U.S. election, including those shared by President Trump and Democratic candidate Vice President Joe Biden. Facebook announced they would be doing this in late June in response to all of the criticism surrounding election misinformation on its platform. For more, I want to bring in Kurt Wagner, who covers social media for us. So, Kurt, so far, what have we seen in terms of how Facebook is implementing this policy?
Well, as you mentioned, it was announced in June that they were going to start doing this, and I'm told that it only started coming into actual practice last week on Friday. So we've already seen them now label a post, as you mentioned, from Trump, Joe Biden, and Senator Chuck Schumer is also on that list. The posts, what it does is it includes a link at the bottom of a Facebook post that then brings people to more information. In this case, they're sending people to the USA.gov website and having them land on a page about voting. In the future, they want to actually bring people to a voting hub that Facebook is creating for itself. It's just not live yet. But this is, as you point out, an attempt to basically educate people about the voting process as they see these posts come across their feed.
Right. And also, I wonder if it's an attempt to sort of take a middle ground in the middle of all of this controversy about what Facebook does and doesn't do when it comes to content on their platform. They're only labeling these posts. They're not actually fact-checking them, correct?
That's right. And I think you're absolutely right in your assessment here. What we've seen over the last 2 months is starting with Twitter fact-checking that post from President Trump in late May about mail-in ballots. We've seen a ton of pressure on Facebook to do the same. And Mark Zuckerberg has said repeatedly he does not want to be in the business of having to fact-check politicians in any form, whether it be an ad or an organic post. And so this policy really covers them for that. They're simply saying, we're going to add this label to every post about voting, regardless of its accuracy. That way they're covering themselves on stuff that is inaccurate, and they're not looking like they're taking a side if, for example, they were to add this only to, President Trump's post and not Joe Biden's.
Meantime, we are looking ahead to the antitrust hearing on Monday, where, as we understand, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, along with the CEOs of Alphabet, Apple, and Amazon, will be appearing before the House Antitrust Subcommittee. What do you know about the proceedings? How will this actually play out on the day?
Yeah, I mean, these are probably the four most famous CEOs in all of technology, right? So this is a really highly anticipated event. I'm excited to kind of see how it plays out. My understanding is it's obviously all going to be online, and it'll be interesting to see who kind of gets the most attention from lawmakers. Usually when we have multiple companies represented at one hearing, it always feels like one company in particular really gets the attention and focus of questions. Facebook typically is that company, but they have never been up there with the likes of an Amazon and Apple before. So I'm very fascinated to see how this plays out. I would expect there will be a lot of questions about Facebook's other properties, the Instagrams and WhatsApps of the world, as we look at how Facebook expands its empire there.
Right. We know that Mark Zuckerberg did testify before Congress a couple of years ago. That was like a day-long event. We later saw Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, sitting next to Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. It'll certainly be interesting to see how all of these CEOs potentially in one room together, what that actually looks like. What are you hearing from Facebook in terms of sort of shaping our understanding of what's going to happen on that day and making their arguments that Facebook shouldn't be broken up?
Well, Facebook has had pretty similar and consistent talking points now for a while on this front, which is that they treat their size as an advantage, right? They talk about things like hate speech, like voter misinformation, and say, look, if we weren't this big, we wouldn't have the resources to actually go out and fight this stuff. They've actually kind of pointed to a company like Twitter, which is much smaller, and said, look at the money we're spending on this is bigger than their entire annual revenue. So I imagine Facebook will kind of continue that line of argument. And also, they've also talked a lot about asking for regulation, saying, hey, we actually want to participate in the regulatory process. Obviously, they want to, right? They want to shape whatever rules come in place. So I imagine that they'll make those similar arguments that we've been hearing in the past. That's kind of been their party line.
Of course. Well, we will be all over it, as will you. Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner, who covers Facebook for us. Thanks so much, Kurt, for that update. And thank you all for watching this edition of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Stay tuned. Bloomberg Daybreak Australia is next. This is Bloomberg.